Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 15 of Macabre Matinee with Craig and Sean. Yeah, 15 episodes. I don't know if that's a landmark or not, but we'll take it.
Right.
As always, I'm Craig Lance.
And I'm Sean, bearded Capolitan.
So, as per usual, time for our spoiler warning. We are going to be talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. If you haven't seen this movie, now's your chance to pause and go watch this movie that's been out nearly 35 years at this point. And
Yeah, little bit out a little while.
yeah. And then come back and finish listening to us rant and rave about it. As I said, this one's subtitled Dream Warriors, and, I always like to give it my own little nickname, and I came up with Or Masters a Puppet, Welcome Home, Sanatorium. In other words, the entire soundtrack should have been Metallica, and instead we got Dawkins.
We have an amazing Dawkins song, sir.
Yeah, but we could have had Sanatorium.
True.
So this movie was released in 1987, and it saw the return of Wes Craven to this franchise in a writing role, along with Bryce Wagner, Frank Darabont of Walking Dead fame.
Oh.
And this was his first movie he ever wrote. And Chuck Russell. Yeah, also directed by Chuck Russell. Yeah, this was the first movie that Frank Darabont gets writing credit for.
Oh, nice. Didn't even catch that.
Yeah, and he's also he also did Mist, and I mean, you know who he is if you've been paying attention to movies at all. Returning from their previous roles in the franchise, of course, we have Robert Englund as Freddy, Heather Langenkamp as Nancy, and John Saxon as Lieutenant Thomas, whatever, Nancy's dad. That's all I ever call him. And introducing Patricia Arquette as Kristen. Yeah, her first movie as well. Also starring Craig Wasson as Dr. Neil, and co-starring Lawrence Fishburne as Max the Orderly.
Or as he's actually credited in the movie, Larry Fishburne, because this is also early
Larry
in his career.
Fishburne.
Yeah, this is one of his early films.
Yes, he was not instructing Neo how to get out of the Matrix yet.
Right.
So this movie begins with Kristen building a papier-mâché and popsicle stick version of Nancy's old house. It is very clear she is trying to stay awake. And as the night progresses, Kristen's mom shows up from a late-night date, and not wanting Kristen to interrupt her naked time with her boyfriend, she forces Kristen to go to bed. When Kristen falls asleep, she arrives in Freddy's world. She follows a little girl into Nancy's old house, and when Freddy attacks, she picks up the doll, the little girl, and begins to run.
Yeah.
It's very clearly a doll she's running with in that scene. I don't know why they do that. I guess just to make it easier on the actors. But...
Yeah, I'm guessing. I didn't want anybody to drop the kid on the set and have to reshoot everything.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Eventually, Kristen startles awake and gets up to use the restroom, except because it's a Freddy movie, she isn't really awake. And once in the restroom, Freddy slashes her wrist, making it look like an attempted suicide, which lands Kristen at a psychiatric hospital. Once there, they try to sedate her, and of course this sends her into a fit where she is somehow able to grab a scalpel, because they have those readily available just lying about in check-in rooms at psych hospitals.
Naturally.
Just then, the new intern, or as we know her, Nancy, shows up and talks Kristen down. As Nancy and Dr. Neil talk later, her purse gets knocked over, and Dr. Neil finds some pills that he later learns Nancy's been taking to keep herself from dreaming. That night, when Kristen falls asleep, she finds herself back in Nancy's old house. The house begins to attack her, and a giant dune worm with Freddy's face begins to eat her. She screams out for Nancy, and Nancy is immediately sucked into her dream, and together they fight off Freddy and escape. The next day in group sessions, Nancy and us as the audience are able to meet the rest of the Elm Street kids, although we don't learn until later that they are all from Elm Street. Nancy eventually talks Dr. Neal into prescribing the kids the same dream suppression medicine she's on, because, you know, that's what psychiatrists do. And that particular night, before the kids can get this dream suppression medicine, it actually takes a few days to get. One of the kids is killed by Freddy, making it look like he jumped from the window to his death. The kids become more frustrated that the doctors don't believe that they are being hunted in their dreams. The doctor's response is to sedate them and lock them in their rooms. Another night passes before the kids are given the drugs, and another one is picked off by Freddy. At the funeral, a nun approaches Dr. Neal and tells him that the remains of Freddy must be put to rest if they ever intend to end this nightmare. And that evening, Nancy, believing Dr. N, or as, you know, he's called in the movie, Neil, is ready to hear the whole truth and tells him about Freddy and her history. Nancy then tells the kids the next day her story and informs them that they are all from Elm Street. And so they come up with a plan to decide to fight Freddy together and thus hypnotize the group. Believing that the hypnosis didn't work, Freddy is able to lure Joey away from the group, putting Joey in a coma and attacking the others. They are eventually awakened by Dr. Bitch Sims. Dr. Neal and Nancy are both let go from the hospital for putting the kids in danger. And as Nancy sits with a comatose Joey, Dr. Neal is confronted by the nun, who tells him the tragic story of Amanda Krueger, the woman who got locked in the room with hundreds of inmates and was raped and found almost dead days later, because no one checks on inmates over holidays, I guess. And
can't be bothered during the holidays.
Yeah. So she's pregnant with a child, and that child is the bastard son of 100 maniacs, or as we know it, Freddy Krueger, because that is totally how DNA works. We find out...
It's science, Craig, okay? It's science.
Yeah, it certainly is something. It's movie science. We'll go with that. We find out later that the nun is Amanda Krueger and that she has been dead for almost 20 years at this point. Neil gets Nancy, and they decide to confront Nancy's father to find out where the remains of Freddy are hidden so that they can bury them. When that doesn't work out, Nancy heads back to the hospital to help Kristen and the kids, because Kristen has been sedated and put in the quiet room, and Neil convinces Nancy's dad to help. Nancy and the other kids enter into dreamland through hypnosis, conveniently just as Kristen falls asleep. Freddy attacks and Kristen wakes up, only she isn't really awake. She's back at the beginning opening sequence, and Freddy is her mom's date and kills her mom. However, the change in scenery has separated the kids and Nancy, and as they find their way back to each other, Freddy starts picking them off. Eventually, all that's left is Kincaid, Kristen, and Nancy. They find their way back to each other, and they soon find Joey still tied to a bed in Dreamland. As Nancy goes to save Joey, Kincaid and Kristen begin battling Freddy. Freddy begins to overcome them, and Dr. Neil and Nancy's dad begin to bury his bones. Sensing this danger, I guess you could call it, Freddy leaves the kids and reanimates his dead bones, once again manipulating the awakened world. But,
yeah,
hey,
a little bit right there.
just a little bit, yeah. I mean, at least it was through his own bones this time. He kills Nancy's father and leaves Neil for dead. Unbeknownst to him, Neil is not actually dead, but just knocked out. And how he didn't know that Neil was actually in Dreamland, I don't know. But hey, movie stuff. So returning to Dreamland, he fights the kids, killing Nancy. And as he is about to kill Kristen, Neil wakes up and finishes the job of putting Freddy's bones in the ground and consecrating it with holy water. Freddy disappears, never to be heard from again, and ending the franchise. Also, don't forget to tune in next week as we discuss the next installment of the franchise.
Yep.
Yeah. So, kind of like they do in these movies, this was intended to be the last one in the franchise. But when a horror franchise makes money and they don't cost a lot of money to make, the end is never the end.
Yeah. Although they did tease the potential. They left it open.
They did.
With the which I thought was kind of a cool, subtle way to do it. Instead of an entire car that's Freddy and ripping a mother through a doorway, just that little light in that creepy ass popsicle house turning on.
Yeah.
That was good. And again, this is for me. Like, I couldn't remember if or when Wes Craven got back involved into the series, at least until New Nightmare, where he had his, literally his name on the title.
Right.
So I'd forgotten that he did get involved with this, and you can tell right away because Wes Craven can make the image of someone making a paper mache house creepy as fuck.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was a great opening that really kind of brought us back into the early creepiness of part one.
I agree. This movie, I remembered it being one of my favorites in the franchise, and it still doesn't disappoint me.
Oh, yeah.
It's got its moments, of course, but overall, man, the creepy factor is way back in this movie, which I think it lacked in the second movie.
Absolutely, as well as just like us, Lord, I didn't write it down. Now I'm going to forget the man's name. The guy that's famous for stop motion, like, Attack of the Titans and or Clash of the Titans, all that.
Yeah.
Except for the skeleton moment, which was a very much that stop motion skeletal battle that reminded me of Clash of the Titans, is what I'm thinking of.
Clash of the Titans. Yes.
With the exception of that, we stuck with Freddy affecting dreams. And we also got back. We got started, which I think it was peaked here to my memory of the rest of the movies. The creative kills in this are very unique and to each person, a very entertaining way of killing people that I think the rest of the movies, and we'll see as we go down the line, they were trying to capture this magic, and most of them didn't. From you have the kid who makes paper mache puppets, getting his tendons ripped out of his arms and being manipulated like a marionette to jump off a building. You have the TV growing arms and his head coming out of it. It's just like, I mean, it's very creative, very, you can tell the Wes Craven goodness is back into this one for sure.
Yeah, you really can. And like I said, the creepy factor, I mean, just the house, Nancy's house itself.
Yeah.
They've now aged it, make it look like a haunted house. It's creepy as fuck. You got the kids out front playing jump rope, singing their nursery rhyme about Freddy. Little girl riding a bloody tricycle through the house. Right. I mean, yeah.
Now, I don't... sorry, go ahead. I cut you off.
No, I was just going to say, it's just creepy as hell, man.
And here, I got to wonder, because I'm sure there were ones before, but I feel like Wes Craven started everyone's fear of little children in horror movies, because they're always creepy as shit. Because since we had the start of the nursery rhyme in part one, You know, I know I'm forever terrified when I see a little kid just randomly standing around in a horror movie. I'm like, get the fuck. Like, technically, it probably started with The Shining, you know, with the
Yeah,
twins.
that's what I was going to say. It started with the twins and The Shining,
Yeah.
but he did not help the situation.
Yeah, but I saw these before I saw The Shining, so I still credit Craven for my personal fear.
There you go. Just like I credit Poltergeist for my fear of clowns, even though it later came out later. But
oh, for sure. But that's what I enjoy about this movie, because I'm with you. This one is one of, if not my favorite, you know, of the series. I didn't even over part one, because like Freddy is, you know, we get a lot more of his character. We get his lore started with DNA facts aside. We do get his birth. We get, at least we understand that he started off in a bad way. You know, that's a bad way to start a life.
Yeah, they grew his whole persona a lot in this movie.
Absolutely. And then again, the creative kills, and then the creative dream powers. I mean, this movie in particular was like so influential. They waited until part 3 to create a albeit terrible, Nintendo game for Nightmare on Elm Street, where you played as the Dream Warriors collecting Freddy's bones.
That's awesome. I did not know that was a thing.
It's actually one of the few 4-player, if you had the multi-tap for the Nintendo. Nice. It's a terrible game, don't get it wrong, but like this one was so like creative, because I mean, not only the creative kills, but also each of the kids having, like, you know, their best selves within their dreams, you know, because
that's right.
Even if you're not, you know, you don't have a high opinion, well, all these kids all have, you know, fucked up lives that put them in this mental institution. But in their dreams, which is normally supposed to be your safe place where your brain can, you know, just let you live your best life, now Freddy's fucking with them. So we have, like, I mean, like I said, the kid in the wheelchair who loves playing. They don't call it Dungeons and Dragons, but it's Dungeons and Dragons.
It's Dungeons and Dragons, yeah.
And, you know, he gets to be a wizard in there. Although, you know what? For a man who can run, a DM should know better that a wizard never gets into melee range.
Yeah, why did he run into melee range? That was stupid. That's what I was thinking about. Why? You're a wizard. Where's your, you know, if Kincaid was there, you would have had a tank.
He's fucking nerds, bro. Fucking nerds, man. He tried a dual class. He took 1 point in Barbarian and thought he was the shit, I guess.
Yeah.
that killed me. I've always laughed at that. Like, why did he move 5 square adjacent, bro? You got to stay out, you know, that range. And yeah, Kincaid, although definitely a tank. But it always struck me hilarious. Like, and you'll see it in other 80s movies typically. Like, all you need to be the strong guy in the 80s movies is be a big dude, whether it's muscle or, like myself, fat, a sleeveless shirt, and some fucking suspenders. You're a strong man in the 80s.
Yep. That's right, man.
And I dig it. And I dig Kincaid. I actually like his character, like that attitude felt real. And I actually found this out. I forgot to write down the actor's name, but his audition, he was late getting there because he missed, like, several buses were stalled due to like a very severe storm. So he was like out in the rain. He was sitting in like the waiting room for like way longer than he was supposed to, soaking wet, freezing. And he came in. They were like, "We don't want you to read the script. Just talk to us." And he just cussed them the fuck out. he just screaming, cussed at them. They're like, "You're hired." It's one of them, you know, that angry man who, you know, and then the dream gets to channel his rage into strength. So yeah, I thought that was a real funny way to get auditioned. Just go in there and cuss out your bosses, and you'll get hired.
Yeah. That, I mean, and I guess he didn't want the role either, but his agent made him audition.
Oh yeah,
so he was even pissed to even be there, is my understanding. So
yeah, you're absolutely
then he gets there and they're like, "Hey, don't read a script, just tell us what you think." Well, motherfucker, you know.
Right, exactly. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you.
Yeah.
I don't need this. Yeah, you know that. So I thought that was pretty great, and I mean, and we got, like, as good as, like I said, we start getting the humor of Freddy. I mean,
that's right.
With Patricia Arquette watching, you know, the TV, watching a show with the real Zsa Zsa Gabor cameo, in this,
yeah,
with an off-screen death when Freddy, like, the host turns into Freddy, is like, "Who gives a shit?" or whatever, like asking her opinion. You just hear it scream and it cuts away. Like, that's just, we're getting into that humor, but it's still working. because like unfortunately, I feel like the sequels to my memory start kind of falling too much on what this one had the right balance of. That makes this one so much more enjoyable than I think some of his the next ones.
Some of the sequels, the like when he kills the drug addict girl.
Oh,
and
yeah.
as he's killing her, he says, "What a rush!" and he even acts like the look on his face is like he's actually getting high himself. So
yeah, absolutely.
He really shines. Robert Englund shines in this movie. I don't know if you're aware, but the roasted pig sequence was actually a roasted pig that they let spoil.
Oh, wow.
And then they had people under the table, like like working its arms and stuff when it came alive.
Oh,
and
that's crazy.
The director said it stunk so bad. Not the set director said it stunk so bad that he still has nightmares of that stench from still to today.
Yeah, that can't be great. I mean, I've worked in a butcher area, and to smell raw pork just being chilled is not a great smell until pork don't smell great until it's cooked. I can't imagine rotting.
Well, it's, and I guess my point to that is the amount of practical effects they used in this movie. Of course, it's really before the time of CGI anyways, but the practical effects are really done well in this movie.
Oh, absolutely.
The worm sequence, or the Freddy snake sequence, whatever you want to call it, I guess he was pink at the beginning of it. But it looked too phallic, so they covered it in green goo.
I could see that.
to make it look darker. And they tried to use that same image on the posters over in Europe, and the UK wouldn't allow it because it was too offensive. So
they don't like penis worms.
Penis Freddy eating a woman was not going to cut it in Europe, apparently. So.
Which, again, I mean, practical effects. That whole thing was built big enough to her to get into for that shot. And, again, like I said, practical effects, animatronics, makeup, and now I remember the name, Ray Harryhausen style stop motion for the skeleton. And I think a little bit on the worm, right? I'm not
100% sure. I know that they were having some problems with the worm, and so they had to film the scene in reverse.
Oh, okay.
And then play it backwards.
Right.
Because when they tried to go the other direction, it didn't work. So.
Right.
But they only had like an hour to film that scene, which is why they couldn't rebuild it. They couldn't change the way it looked. Their answer was just to cover it in the goo because they didn't have time, and then it wasn't working quite right. So it's like, okay, well, let's film it in reverse where she's actually crawling out of the mouth.
Yeah.
And then they just played it backwards. So
gotcha. But yeah, like sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I mean, you could tell the work, you could tell like the crew, even Kincaid, who didn't want to be here. I feel like they all had a lot of fun because like everyone, whether the different acting quality and levels of each person, you could tell no one really felt like they were phoning it in. Like I feel like
I think the acting was pretty solid in this movie.
Absolutely.
For a horror movie,
right?
Especially you have to judge horror movies based on it being a horror movie, especially from the 80s and early 90s.
Oh, for sure.
They did not go out and get quality actors most of the time, but it feels like what Nightmare on Elm Street did is they would spend a little bit of money getting, pretty decent or up and coming actors. Right. They would get like some names like her dad to come in and be in a couple of movies.
Well, you get John Saxon to do anything. You got some quality control. You're bringing him, and even Lawrence Fishburne. I'm sure this is early in his career, but he was still for a little bit just kind of like a side character. He was likable. He was supposed to be that likable attendant. And, I thought he was really good for as early as career. We know what he went on to become, of course.
And, of course, Patricia Arquette and Johnny Depp. I mean, they got some quality young actors as well.
Right.
Early in these movies. So, And like you touched on earlier, the lore of Freddy, kind of expanding that, where we got his origin story,
Right.
but we also get the story where we now learn that when he kills kids, he kind of traps their souls in his body,
Right.
and he gets more powerful the more he kills.
Right. And
So,
with the return of John Saxon and Nancy, like now we have, like, you can almost, this is more so than two. This feels like a continuation from one.
yeah, like we talked about last week, you can kind of skip two because
Right.
it really doesn't play into the rest of the lore of the franchise. But yeah, this one is really feels like a direct sequel, as you said, and it's supposed to be a few years later. And I kind of like that they just pretend that the ending of the first one was just a dream.
Yeah.
You know, everything that happened up to her telling Freddy that he no longer had power over him is where it kind of ends, which makes sense because Wes Craven didn't really want that other ending.
Right.
So, you know, they'd put that in to set up a sequel when in turn they didn't need it.
No, for sure. Because he didn't. He intended for Nightmare on Elm Street to be a one and done. That's why he didn't have
Yep.
anything to do with part two. But despite some of the failings of two, it made money, and the studio was
Yeah.
like, "We're gonna Wes, we're gonna continue. You sure you want to set the next one out?" And he's like, "No, fuck it. If you're gonna keep using my creation, let me get in on it a little bit." Which again, we'll see as we go through the next ones. I don't know how much more involvement he had until the new Nightmare.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure either. You know, and I feel like that you can tell that his influence was in this one because of the script
Yeah.
and also probably on set a little bit. But certainly going off of memory, I don't feel like his involvement was real deep in some of the other ones.
Right.
I have a question, and I don't know if you know the answer or not. And it just occurred to me, or I would have done
Okay.
some research.
Sure.
In the scene where Taryn, the drug addict girl, dies,
Yeah.
when she's walking towards the bar, like an old hobo guy walks past her. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering if that wasn't Wes Craven.
It might have been. I sure
Because
didn't
he
notice.
like Stan Lee, does some cameos in his movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now that I'm thinking about it, and I should have done some research on that, but it just popped in my head.
Thought I looked a little bit like him because I don't
Yeah.
necessarily remember. But I'm
The
actually looking right now just in case. So you keep talking about the movie.
okay, yeah. So in this movie came out in late '80s. Videos were a big thing at that time, and Dawkins did a video for this movie called Dream Warriors. The song called Dream Warriors, written for the movie, and they did this video, and they actually vanquish Freddy at the end, and then he wakes up and is like, "What the hell?" In one of the, it was kind of, I don't know if this was the start of that, but this was something that was going on heavy in the late '80s, early '90s with movies where they'd bring in these rock bands to do videos for them.
Right.
And that's probably why they didn't use Metallica's music, because there's no way Metallica was making that cheesy ass video.
No, they weren't. I can't find anything on that, but now I want to go
Yeah.
back and look. Yeah, but like it would have been great to have Metallica on the soundtrack, of course, in the late '80s. Metallica, that would have been amazing. But you know what? Dokken, for all of its cheesy hair metal greatness, they fucking brought it. I love the Dream Warriors song in this, and I'm definitely gonna have to I'm gonna drop a link in case y'all don't want to look it up because you got to hear it. It's to me, I love it.
Yeah, it's good. It really is. I'm really just kind of being funny about the Metallica stuff because there's really no way Metallica at that point in time was going to do anything like this.
Right.
So I don't know if you know this, but one of the parts that was, I don't want to say left on the cutting room floor, but it was actually cut at some point from the movie, and it was in the original script.
Mm-hmm.
One of their powers was going to be able to create transformers.
Bro, no, I did not know that.
Yeah. So no word as to why. I'm assuming expenses, because when they originally created this,
Right.
they had a $4.5 million effects budget,
Oh,
and they went to the production and said it's going to cost $20 million, and I'm pretty sure they were told no.
you know what?
So
I'm gonna make a bold statement right here.
yeah,
If they had done that and got
yeah,
Transformers into this, even just a transforming robot
yep.
as a power, this would have been the greatest movie in the 1980s.
I
Because
mean,
that's literally the only thing this movie is missing would be 80s era Transformers.
they tried. They wrote it into the script.
Oh my
Yeah, I'm not
god.
sure he's. I would imagine it would have been the dude in the wheelchair,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah.
have his wheelchair transform into into a robot. It would have been pretty impressive. But yeah, I saw that and I was like, wow. I wonder if Sean knows that or not. So
Yeah, no, I did not know that one. Yeah, I mean, I already love this movie, but that would have cemented it as the greatest film of the 1980s at all, the entire decade. I don't care what else came out.
yeah. So this movie, like all of the Friday the 13th, all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, does not actually have a lot of kills.
Right.
It lives, as this series does, on suspense, comedy to relieve that suspense, and a handful of kills. I
Yeah.
think there is only 7 kills in this movie, and one of them being Zsa Zsa Gabor, so we have no idea if that's real or if that's just her dreaming. And one of them also being Kristen's mom, which we
Right.
have no idea if that's real or just part of her dream. So potentially only 5 kills.
Oh wow. Yeah.
But as you said, the kills were pretty damn good in this movie.
Yeah, they were.
So I'm interested to hear what your kill of the week was.
My kill of this week was the one that not only was creative, it was unique to the person. It also had, I would argue, one of his most iconic lines that was actually an ad lib. I forget the entire line because like the first part of what he says was in the script. It's Patricia Arquette's television kill.
That's not Patricia Arquette.
Or not
but
Patricia
yeah,
Arquette.
no,
I'm sorry.
yeah,
But her.
the other girl.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the other girl. Never mind. I think I said it was. I called her that earlier too. But
they're
yes,
both blonde.
the blonde girl that wants to be on TV with
Yeah.
the cigarette burns. Yeah. Oh yeah. Because the first part, of, when the arms grow out the TV, his head comes out doing the kind of that stretchy material trick again
Yeah.
with the antenna, which were just so cute. And he grabs her up, and he's like, it's like, it's time for your close up. That was in the script, but by like they had to do that shot apparently a few different times. And by the last one they used, Robert Englund just said, "Welcome to prime time, bitch," and shoved her into the television. And that the "Welcome
Which
to
is
prime
amazing.
time," yeah, that was an ad lib from Robert Englund, who's just
That's pretty amazing.
having a blast in the role of Freddy. That's definitely my kill of the week for this particular film.
Well, yeah, mine was the marionette one that you spoke about already, and it's that because whenever I think of this movie, like the Jason Goes to Manhattan, the scene where the dude gets his head punched off,
Right.
this is the scene that I always think about when I'm thinking of this movie.
And it's a good
And
one.
it still works to this day. I mean, just pulling out his veins and using them for marionette strings is just freaking amazing.
Yeah, and
So-
and again, creative, personalized kills, because like we know, the first one had brutal kills, but there was nothing about I forget her name, the first kill of her getting lifted up into the ceiling, the Johnny Depp blood geyser. This dude was a sleepwalker.
That's right.
And he, I believe he maybe even had like tried to slit his wrists. That's what he mentioned, like no sharp objects. I could be wrong about that, but like
I think just in general in a psych ward, there's
Right.
no sharp objects.
But the sleepwalker thing. That why even though in the dream, yeah, he's got his veins being used as puppet strings, But what they see in real life is just him walking, him sleepwalking. Even Kincaid sees him and goes, "Man, go back to bed," because they don't
Yeah.
think anything of it. So again, like,
Yeah.
it starts the unique kills that are personal to each victim, which is, I think, a staple, whether for better or worse in the later ones, of Nightmare on Elm Street.
I agree, and it's done so well in this movie. You know, like I said, Taryn, I think is her name. I can't remember the girl, the drug addict girl.
Right.
The way he kills her with drugs.
Yeah.
Even though it's not drugs, it's just his needles, but it looks like syringes.
But making his, the famous knife glove into, needles and on both hands. Still, that's again very creative, very cool. Any one of these could have won, but like, my favorite is the TV one, and because that's what I think of, and like you said, you think of the marionette one. So, yeah.
Well, and even Joey, even though he doesn't die,
right,
he's making out with the nurse in his dream, of course, and she turns into Freddy, and he ties him to the bed with tongues. And you get that comment, "Oh, you feeling a little tongue-tied?" So, Freddy, Robert Englund just takes it to another level. I'm assuming part of that's the script, part of that's the way he plays it. But yeah, I've got almost zero complaints about this movie.
Yeah, oh no, none at all. To be honest, it's it is right now, and until, like I said, we'll go back through, and even with like Friday the 13th, we found some ranking higher than what we remembered. But yeah, I still have a strong feeling this is still my favorite of the franchise.
Exactly. Yeah, so this is really just up there, like you said. It's one of my favorites in the franchise, and there's just no telling how. Again, based off of memory until we rewatch them, it rates really high for me. So based on that, I gave it a 4.5.
4.5? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's more than fair. I actually give it 5.
Did you?
Yeah. I love this film.
Yeah. It's a very, very good movie, and I remembered it being my favorite in the series from, I watched this one in the theater. It was the first one I watched in the theater.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was I want to say a sophomore in high school. I graduated in 89, so somewhere around there.
Okay,
so, me and my buddy went and watched it. And yeah, I remember walking out of there, we were laughing about all the kill scenes. And, when you can walk out of a horror movie and still talk about the kill scenes and things like that, that's always a good sign. So, that gives it a total of a 9.5. So, not bad. Can't do much better than that.
Yeah, I don't think, honestly, I could be wrong, but I don't think anyone else is going to come close this
I will be surprised. I will be surprised. So,
well, okay. Well, I think that is going to have to do it for today. Thank y'all very much for tuning in. As always, if you like what you heard, give us a like, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the deal by now. But especially, we really would like to hear from y'all. What y'all think about these movies? Like, did you enjoy it? Did you, do you agree with our ranking this as high as we did, or do you think we're dumb as hell and part 2's a masterpiece? Let us know. We always like hearing from y'all. But that's gonna do it for today. So we'll catch y'all later.
See you next week.